IGBC itself. A very unusual meeting, shall we say, encounter that I got to Dr. Professor Vedula Krishna through a series of other people from the United States who have been trying to see what they can do to contribute to building the future of engineering as the next generation of engineers go in India. And I told myself when I saw the set of things that they were curating as themes, that here are a bunch of people, here is a bunch of people who are doing something extraordinary in the things that they are presenting as programs, as conferences, as discussion discourses for people, particularly for students of engineering and architecture. And that got me to speak to Vedula Krishna. I invited him to see if he can speak to us. We have today also from Apeejay. I don't want to introduce anybody, but you'll listen to them also. We have with us also the chairperson, founder.
I think there's a bad audio.
We seem to have lost him. Sorry.
I think he dropped off. If I may just
take over, Payal. Yeah.
Yes. Deepakji, may I ask you to see word? You are our partners in this year's distinguished lectures, for which I am very grateful. Thank you very much. If I may ask you to share some opening remarks, and then
I think you are also breaking up. Your audio is a little bit bad too, Payal. But never mind. I think we know where we are headed. So we all are assembled here today to listen to Dr. Krishna. I represent Bry Air, and we are partners with PJMT on all these lecture series. But talent, upcoming talent, training is close to my heart. So I'll share a few things with you. Today, people are competing with each other in terms of various disciplines, and children themselves, when they're coming up of age, they don't know which discipline to go towards or which one not to go towards, which they generally look at money, and that may be one of the reasons for going in one direction or another. But I'll take you through a couple of very quick experiences. Nothing to tread on what Dr. Krishna is talking about, just so that life's experience I want to tell you. One day I was having a breakfast meeting with Dr. Mamma. He is very well known in the Indo air quality program, HVAC, heating, ventilating. And when I was having breakfast with him, and we were discussing about how difficult it is to attract people to HVAC field or any other field. So he says, what I do is that in the third or fourth, in the very early period, not the third, fourth year, but in the very early period, I get companies who sponsor people, and I take my students to shows so they can see and look and feel and see what is they are in for in life. So when they go to the show, they see it physically, and it's not a theory anymore, and they start relating, and then they get their attention in one direction. So this is something which we have been practicing also here in India. We encourage more than 200 students every year to go to the HVAC show and sponsor them. But I think this is one very important tool that one has found over the years in terms of trying to inspire youngsters at a very early age. The second thing which comes to my mind, and this takes me back 20 years ago to a very interesting article, which was in, I don't know, Newsweek or Business Week, which was talking about the upcoming 10 top technologies in the world and what are the building blocks for that. So I was very inspired by that, and I was looking at it, and one of the things was they were mentioning that mathematics people will be in short supply 10, 15 years from now. Why maths people? They started talking about algorithms, learning algorithms, teaching algorithms in college at various places. And today everything is being driven by that, as you can see around you. So I went to my BHU college when I was invited for something else. So they were discussing many things, and we were talking about the syllabus and syllabus changes. So I try to provoke those people and stir them that you're into so much tradition. Why don't you look at the upcoming technologies? Why doesn't your fundamental course material start to include what will be something of the future that they can use as a building block today? So I said, for example, algos. And as I told them 15 years ago, I said, you should teach us as one of your items in your curriculum to begin with. So there were 7, 8 other examples there. And I told them, like material sciences, see what is happening there. So all I want to just say very quickly is that the world is changing. Definitely people now have an ability to self-train also by way of Google or any other methods. But I think somewhere along the line, you have to tie in all that. And we are all here for the same purpose, trying to see how these resources can be trained and built into interesting potential entrepreneurs or whatever have you. And I'll close by citing an encounter with another 40-year-old or 40-year-old person 2 days ago in the evening. And he was saying, he says, Deepak uncle, I heard you and you taught me something. And today it is coming to great advantage. And I also teach that. So I'm going to just lay that sentence in front of you. You can draw your own conclusions from that sentence. And since there are many participants who are youngsters today, and the sentence was, depth creates height. Depth creates height. And I think you all understand this. In your own way, you've distinguished yourselves. The more depth you create, the more height you create for yourself. And I hope the participants today read into it in their own way. And Dr. Krishna, now over to you. Please wrap up, do your complete discussion the way you'd like to. They invited me to say a few words. So I have completed a little bit of rambling. Thank you for doing the lecture for us today.
Thank you, Mr. Pava. And before Dr. Krishna speaks, can I request Architect Vivek to possibly share some quick thoughts, which can set some expectations for Dr. Krishna also on what he might want to share with our students as well as our professionals. Over to you, Architect Vivek.
Yeah, I think thank you so much for inviting us and being the host college for this event. And on behalf of our college, I would request Professor Anand Khatri to share this the thoughts where we stand, because we have just wanted to let everyone know about the values that we share with PJMT and coming together. It's been a long association. So I'll just request Professor Anand Khatri to share some of the thoughts.
Thank you, Professor Vivek Sabharwal, and I am really happy to be representing the host college, Apeejay School of Architecture and Planning, for this discussion in the series which Prem Jain Memorial Trust has initiated. I want to thank you all for your presence in this talk by Dr. Krishna Vedula. The reason being that intellectualization of an agenda, presence on an agenda is very important. It is very important to stand together and discuss climate change and to uphold intellectually the cause focused to bring in our lives and aspirations as a race. I must also, mention that the way we are growing, as it was right now mentioned by our eminent speaker, that depths create heights. We are all connected. We are all interconnected race. We are interconnected in our existence, not just by economy and karma, but we are also carrying threads and destinies of what our fathers and ancestors initiated. Like a brick course in a wall, the previous course cannot be changed, but it's only the present that can be modified and changed. So the time is now, and it's all in the hands of the engineers and the architects of our race, whose role is undisputed. So the topic picked up by Krishna Vedula on, understanding the resource management by architects and engineers is really important. At APJ, we teach balance. India, in its Indianness, promotes the thought of simplification. It promotes giving up, not by sadness of depravity, but by the renunciation, the wisdom of renunciation, you know. So while we are facing all possible changes today, as we have stood against COVID-19 virus through our healthy germs and health cells, we have to take the same conscious decision in fighting these agendas together. Environment conscious thought built architecture has been the ethos of education at APJ. PJMT and AIT-SAP collaborate because of our common values in upholding sustainable living and climate change. A small film commemorating our journey with the PJMT founder, Mrs. Jain, is there. It's hardly a 30 seconds film, demonstrating the kind of setups we do and the kind of activity and exhibits that we have. And, you know, I must conclude through a small chaupai of Ramayana. Shiti Jal Pavak Gagan Samira, Panch Rachit Ati Adham Sarira. We are the right balance of elements, and in their rightful balance is our existence. So I'm just sharing a small film. Yatin, if you could help me with the screen share.
You can screen share now, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you so much.
I think that's done. Thank you so much, Professor Khatri. Nice of you. I mean, I didn't expect you to sort of, resonate with what we have, uncannily, what we have today, coming from Professor Vedula Krishna. Krishna, the floor is yours.
Okay.
You can take maybe 30 minutes.
Bye.
My last observation is that you can see the participants list. We have over 60. Many of them are architects. Many of them are engineers. I don't see too many people who are from the MBA backgrounds today. You can keep that in mind as you speak. Over to you now.
Okay.
And we will be all ears. Thank you.
So all of you have raised so much expectations from what I'm going to say. But let me try to emphasize a few points based on my experience the last several years. If I don't know if the participants can send text messages or not, but if they are, I'll be happy to read them and see the responses.
They will be sending it on the chat box.
The chat box, okay. I'm
to
not
all of you
in the chat box. Okay, great. Okay.
I will coordinate that. I will track that and alert you to it as we go along. The other is that if there are people who want to speak, please request you to raise hands on the system, and we will come back to you. Maybe even open the audio for you to speak. Keep that in mind, all of you out there. Over to you, Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Hariharan. Thank you, Deepak ji, Anand ji, Vivek ji, and of course Payal ji. Thank you all for letting me join this distinguished company of very thoughtful professionals in having a discussion on training engineers to be so smart. This is kind of a title that was adapted based on something that I had sent earlier to Hari. I really would like to emphasize some of these different parts of this one. The word training is I think we need to go beyond that. I think we need to go beyond the word training and just, I'm sure you all agree that educating is really what our students should be able to do to get from all of us. What we have found in the last several years in all the engineering colleges that we work with, we have found that the culture of mugging up and passing exams, okay, is very, very prevalent, which is true not just in India, but in the outside also. So, I think you'll all agree that engineering can only be learned by doing engineering. So we emphasize doing engineering in all our programs. We have a mantra for the teachers saying, I'm teaching, are they learning? Okay, so we work with about 50 engineering colleges all over India. And our objective is to improve the quality of the engineering education of the graduates that come out of these engineering colleges. And our fundamental belief is that they must work on projects in order to become good engineers. They must do engineering in order to become good engineers. They must be problem solvers. And that is the only way that they can be creative, critical thinkers, innovative thinkers. So I feel depressed when many of our students, they just mug up and pass exams. And many of our faculty cater to that desire for students to take the easy way to mug up and pass exams. So that is the reason we have this mantra for teachers. I'm teaching, are they learning? Not just mugging up, are they learning something from what I'm teaching so that they can do something with that knowledge in a practical way, which is going to benefit the future of industry, society, and the world. Okay, so and then the resource smart part of it, I think is now becoming even more and more critical because of the concept of sustainability. Okay, we have to be smart in terms of using the resources that have been given to us by nature. We just have this one earth, and we have to be smart in how we use that. And so again, that has to do with sustainability and the circular economy. And I see some very interesting things going on in India, which are a reason for hope that we will actually do some exciting things for the future. Okay, so if you look at the circular economy concept, there are the various R's that people talk about. Okay, one is reuse. Okay, so in this, unfortunately, many of the people in society keep moving towards just disposable things, disposable materials. Buy something, throw it away. Buy something, throw it away. And we have these huge mountains of garbage collecting everywhere, which includes plastics, electronics waste, and biological waste, and all kinds of things. So we have to train our engineers to be smart in terms of making the economy more circular. What do I mean by that? I mean, we should encourage the several R's. How do we reuse what we have? Okay. How do we repair what we have? Okay. The reuse part of it, actually, if you look around at society, the lower income people in our society are much better at doing things sustainably than the higher income people. Those higher income people, we stay in 5-star hotels, have these fancy cars, and then from the windows, we throw out the plastic bottles, and we have big parties and throw out garbage everywhere, and mountains pile up. But if you look at the villages and the lower income people, they're much more conscious that they can reuse. They have these plastic buckets, for example, right? And they keep reusing them. And not only that, I was just amazed to see the innovativeness in which that once if the plastic buckets has a little hole in it, they actually repair it. And we've heard of that. Only in India, you can repair a plastic bucket and use it again. So the concept of reuse, repair, remanufacture, recycle, all of these are things that are ingrained more in the lower levels of economy in India, and they understand this concept better than the more wealthy people actually. So and they have a lot of this sense of jugaad, put things together in a way that we can make useful products and useful technologies by putting some things together. Okay, so our program, how you see, we started about 12 years ago with a little bit of funding from Deshpande and Narayan Murthy of Infosys, because at that time I was just reconnecting with India after several years in the United States, teaching engineering to various students in different institutions. And I kept getting bothered that the emphasis on engineering education, even in the United States, is more on mugging up and passing exams, and less on problem solving, innovation, creative thinking, and so on. So now we have about 100 experts around the world who work together as a team, and we have 50 engineering colleges all over India who are engaged in these activities that we are working on. So we have teacher empowerment programs where we work with teachers, faculty from the institutions to go beyond just getting the students to mug up and pass exams. We have them work on projects, actual projects. And if students work on projects, okay, they learn some skills which they never get by just memorizing something and passing exams. Okay, what do they get? When you work on a project, the first step in working on a project is to identify the project, okay? And we never teach people how to identify a problem or a project. Let them first identify a project, and that they do by interacting with the people who are facing the problem. So then they have to go and meet with the people who are facing the problem, whether it's an industry client, whether it's somebody having a water problem in the village, or somebody having an energy problem somewhere, and so meet with the people and understand the problem. And that understanding generates a lot of insights into the types of solutions that are possible. And then when you do that, the student himself or herself develops the skills of empathy with the customer. And that's very important. And when they do that, they're going beyond just learning technical skills, but they're learning the social skills, understanding the values of the people that you're working with. And then they go as a team and work with the community, and that helps team skills and brainstorming. And once you identify the problem to some extent, then you say, okay, now I'm going to go and do some research on what might be possible solutions in here, okay? And many times students have the tendency to say, okay, I know what the problem is, without even talking to the people who are facing the problem, okay? They assume they know the problem. And then they say, okay, I know what the solution is. You have to do this, this, and this, and done, okay? That is a wrong approach even to problem-based learning, project-based learning. So even people who do projects and problems, they don't do it the right way, where they have to engage the students in working with the community, working with the customer, working with the people who are going to benefit from your work, and then brainstorm together as a bunch of students work together, maybe with some faculty mentor, and that leads to innovative thinking, critical thinking, creative thinking. All of these, by the way, are emphasized by the new education policy in the government, okay? And the problem, of course, is how do you actually implement these things? And that's where many people struggle. But what I'm saying is, by having students work on projects, they learn all of these skills by working together. And then once you look at, identify the problem, and then you try to find solutions, and they learn the skills of doing research. What have people done before in India, in other parts of the world? Students have a tendency to say, oh, I have the best idea in the world already. I don't have to do any more research, and I will just go and implement it. That is wrong. So they have to sit back and look at possibilities. And now information available at the fingertips. Everywhere information available. So we don't really have to give them information. We have to teach them how to use the information productively to make decisions and come up with solutions. And so once you look at the different depth of the possible solutions, then again, brainstorm together. Each solution will have a benefit, will have an advantage and disadvantage. And so you rank them, you figure out which one is the most optimum one, which is more practical, what can be done, and then start building a small prototype, and then take it back to the customer and try to get their feedback to see if you really understood what they need. Is that prototype solving any of their problems that they started off telling you about? Sometimes what happens, the customer really doesn't know exactly what solution they're looking for. And when you put a prototype in front of them, they start saying, oh, wow, yeah, this is really not what I wanted. I wanted this type of solution. Okay, so that interaction with the customer and the client is extremely important. I'm sure many of your architects and so on, I'm sure you do these kinds of things in your classrooms along with your faculty members. Okay, and so once you build a prototype, then you go to the next level and actually start building something a little bit bigger, but then you might find that it doesn't work, and then you have to go back and redesign and go through the whole design, the design thinking, problem solving process again. What this does, okay, and so many of you are educators, administrators in education institutions, and you know that what's important, faculty and administrators in colleges, they find that accreditation is very important. Ranking is very important. ABET accreditation, NBA and NAC accreditation, ranking. So all of these compliances that the institutions have to go through, the administrators are trying to fill up these forms with all this information. In there are many things that require that you have to get the students to think creatively. You have to get them to go beyond the level of just mugging up, but also designing, building, synthesizing, analyzing. That kind of thinking has to be shown. And then they have to show that the students have communication skills, teamwork, project management skills, awareness of society, lifelong learning, ethics. All of these are automatically built into if you approach it by having them do projects. So we keep emphasizing that. Okay, but the problem is that most of the faculty do not have any background in guiding and mentoring in this kind of a process of problem-solving education. So we spend a lot of time with our faculty in all these colleges, and most of them give up after initial stage, but they may persist with some of them and slowly get them to work on projects with the students and guide the students to use this approach. And therefore the faculty also learn a lot in the process. Because otherwise they're still in the old mode of saying, okay, just get up in front of the class and give a lecture for 50 minutes and go away, give some homework assignment and go away. No, that's not the way learning happens. You have to get them to interact with each other, get the students work on real problems, doing engineering, and then guide them, be a guide on the side rather than a sage on the stage, okay? So this is where, the faculty empowerment programs that we work on are moving in this direction. Of course, it's not easy. That's why in 10 years, we made some progress, slow progress, but I think we have to keep at it from all education institutions should move in this direction. And one example, let me give another example that's really relevant to sustainability here, okay? We have a course called Clean and Green Campus. So we say, okay, each college come up with teams of students with one faculty member, 3-4 students with one faculty member, and look around your campus. See if there is a project that you can do on the campus itself. You may be managing of the waste, food waste that's coming out of a canteen, maybe figuring out how to reduce the wastage of water in various facilities on your campus. Maybe come up with solar energy, some kind of solar energy equipment, solar energy panels that can be used on the campus. And more recently, I've been extremely bothered by the fact that we have so much electronic waste. So we're trying to get the colleges to think about the electronic waste that is being generated on campus. Okay, so let me ask see if you have any comments so far on what I've said. Maybe I can respond to some of that. And see and maybe if you're familiar with climate change, let me ask you a quick question to get you thinking. Okay, climate change. Well, what do you think is the most important aspect of climate change that there is evidence of today? Anybody want to comment on that?
Well, we have a format where they can't all speak.
Okay, but can you chat? Can you chat?
Just now put on the chat box.
Can you chat? Can the chat say
I put that note
something
on the
about
chat box.
about climate change?
I've asked them just now, whether they agree with you that, well, climate change is one question. My other question that I put up there.
Sure.
Let's hope that they will.
So I'll keep going, but what we can do is our panel, this group here can actually interact about some of the things that I've been talking about. And so more recently, we have been trying to emphasize the climate change because it's really becoming a hot topic. It become a hot topic all over the world, and there is no doubt that the temperature of the globe has changed, and we keep educating our engineering students that the temperature of the globe has changed because of human activity. There's absolutely evidence that is because of human activities, not nothing. It's just because human beings, since the Industrial Revolution, have started creating products which require emission of so much carbon dioxide, increasing the amount of carbon in the air. That is absolutely the reason why we have this global warming. And once we have global warming, we're going to have these very extreme climate events like floods and heat and so on. It's already happening in many parts of the world. And the unfortunate part of that is that the people who are in wealthy countries and colder countries may not see it immediately. Those who are in poorer countries and warmer countries are going to see it immediately. And the most affected will be those at the bottom of the economic ladder. So we really have to take this seriously, and we have to get our younger generation to think about these things seriously. So this is really, I just wanted to see if and in the process, okay, let's say we looked at some of these issues of electronic waste, for example, and that really bothers me because so many computers, so many cell phones, all of these things are going into piles somewhere. Plastic is going to pile somewhere. The projects that might that students might be able to go into these computers and which are being thrown away, or electronic gadgets which are being thrown away. Find ways to, again, the 3-4 R's: reuse if you can. Remanufacture if you can from those parts, recycle, and repair or refurbish. Okay, so these are all 4 R's of part of the global economy. So can we get our students on the campuses, starting with their own computers and their own mobile phones, okay, to look into what can be done with the electronic waste, such as staring right in front of you. And I think we have a very creative people, and as I said, we have the jugaad culture. Students are very creative, and particularly lower income, particularly uneducated people are even more creative sometimes. Okay, so can we create this environment where our students will go out into communities and work on projects of these kinds of things, and then when they find a suitable opportunity, actually become entrepreneurs where they can make a little money rather than just go and start working for Infosys or some big company. Okay, so I'm just threw out a few ideas here. As I said, the important thing is doing engineering. Okay, stop mugging up and solving because information is out there. You don't have to mug up anything. It's all there at your fingertips. Don't mug up anything. Just learn how to learn. So lifelong learning is the biggest thing that we can contribute to the students in the colleges nowadays. Okay, so doing things, whether it's if you're an engineer, you do engineering. If you're an architect, you do architecture, right? But again, keeping in mind that all of these projects are multidisciplinary. Once again, the new education policy emphasizes multidisciplinary education, holistic education. Everything has a social and, believe me, even a political impact, okay, economic impact. So students have to become aware that sometimes, even if you might have best intentions and found the best solution, the social or political aspects don't let you implement them. And so now you have to get in, become an activist in some areas and try to make those changes happen. So you have to understand those kinds of things. Okay, so all of these are issues that, again, we can get, all of us can have a few comments on that. And then again, I repeat this mantra, okay, for all faculty members anywhere in the world. I am teaching, are they learning? Okay, I am teaching, are they learning? I keep, every time I get up in front of a crowd of faculty members, I say, repeat that mantra after me. I am teaching, are they learning? If they are not learning, it is my fault. If they're not learning, it is not because they are stupid. It's not because they haven't had the right background. It's because I am not doing the right thing. I have to change how I teach in order to make sure they are learning. Because as somebody said earlier in this group, these kids are brilliant. I mean, you look around them, they're just enthusiastic, energetic, and they're doing all kinds of fun stuff. But they're different. They grew up in the generation with cell phones and computers and so on. They're quite different from all of us who are much older. And so we have to understand them. We have to tailor what we teach and how we teach in such a way that they can use the knowledge available and we can guide them as they move forward. Okay. So I'm going to, Hari, is that about right time to get some discussion going between the groups of people? Yes. I mean, because distinguished people here, I would much rather have a discussion with them rather than go yapping away.
Dr. Krishna, there is a question from a student. He is saying, is it because of the human extension of the race in the non-habitable living conditions like extreme cold climates, that the climate change that we are facing is there? Is the global warming because of that? Should we have, I think the student means that should we have as a race limited our living only to climatically generous terrains? Should we not have extended?
Not really. I think there is very clear evidence, okay, that human activity is causing climate change. Okay, if you look at the graph, okay, time versus temperature, sudden spike in the last 100 years. Even 1.5 degrees is a huge number, because just imagine our human body itself. If suddenly our temperature of body goes up by 2 or 3 degrees, they're getting closer to death, right? And so the globe has changed. It has already changed. A sudden spike in the last 100 years, okay? And that maps perfectly with a sudden spike in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, perfectly, okay? And that maps perfectly with when human beings started going in and digging coal for production of steel in the industrial revolution. It maps perfectly with that point. The steam engine, all of these things, and the electricity, and so you know, in India, and for development purposes, we have to keep bringing out coal, but still 70% of our energy is coal-based. That is a disaster. We have to go faster against that, faster to reduce.
I'm glad you said that about coal. Professor Khatri, I'll put it like this to you. What Dr. Vedula is saying, I will extend now and answer the question that that has been raised. Let's forget about climate change at these large levels elsewhere. You know, I take my house or the house of the person who asked this question. Every month, we spend about 500 units of electric power. And as Dr. Krishna just now said, it means that 70% of it is coal-driven or thermal power plant-based. What does that mean to us? Every 2 months, it's 1,000 units, right? 1,000 units of power that I consume means that at source energy, somewhere in Ramagundam or the Raichur thermal plant or whatever, we are producing 4,000 units because of the transmission distribution losses, AC-DC, DC-AC losses, etc. Now, what does that mean? So for 1,000 units of 2 months, I've got 4,000 units of power that somebody is producing. Now, two things happen there. For every 1,000 units or every MWH, all of you listening to this conversation, you might even want to make notes on this and make a case exercise out of this. 1 MWH is 1,000 units. 4,000 units, therefore, for 2 months means that for every 1 MWH, you have lost about 30,000 liters of groundwater that somebody is taking for washing your coal, for using that coal back in the thermal plant. And thermal plants are run on steam. And therefore, without water, I can't produce coal-based power, right? So 30,000 liters for every 1,000 units, that means every 2 months of it. Second, when you produce 4,000 units there, it means that I'm using up about 1.1, about 4.4 or 4,400 kgs of coal I'm using to produce this 4,000 units of power. In a year, therefore, if I take the same example of 500 units into 12, 6,000 units, 6,000 into 4 as source energy, 24,000 units, or roughly about 26,000 kgs or 27 tons of coal. And if I take that same 30,000 liters, 720,000 liters of embodied water. So your house is contributing to global warming. Your house is contributing to climate change simply because you're consuming 720,000 liters of water that is drawn from the groundwater, which means you're demolishing some forest or the other, the top layers, and therefore the ground levels, tribals suffer, forests suffer, rivers suffer. I call it the TFR syndrome. So 720,000 liters on one side, and as I told you, coal of about.
So
that is climate change for all of you.
But the good part of it is that we've got some brilliant young people who are developing technologies which can change this around. I think we've got excellent people developing technology in the energy sector, in the water sector, in the architecture sector. For example, there are lots of beautiful architects around the country who are doing sustainable architecture, sustainable building, which actually allows the water, for example, okay, because most of the urban construction that we have, okay, the water comes, God gives us, nature gives us water, okay, and that water comes down, and we need to make sure it goes into the groundwater and keeps the groundwater level high enough that we can continue to sustain ourselves. But we're digging bore wells everywhere and pulling out that groundwater, and we're saying, oh, what do we do now? And if you have an urban jungle, the rainwater comes down and runs through the concrete into the ocean. So there's a saying that we have to make water walk, not run. Make water walk. When it comes down, make sure it goes into the ground, into the soil, all the way to the ground where it pick it up. And there are people who are working on various technological solutions. And that is what I'm saying. The younger generation is doing many of these things, and we can read about it all the time. So thank you, youngsters.
Let me extend that for all of you. And I'm sure Professor Krishna will say something about it. Finally, it's about not theoretical learning alone. Principles are important. And your faculty is doing a great job, I'm sure of that. What is important is take the states where you're all in, between UP, Haryana, and Punjab. I'm not even counting Bihar. Just these three states account for 70%, 70% of the groundwater withdrawal in all of India, right? And what does that mean? Banaras today, among 75 districts in UP, Banaras is among the third highest, Balia is the first, which has the highest incidence of cancer emerging from arsenic. BHU, Mr. Pava is from Banaras, in that sense. I mean, he was at least he studied there. Now, if I take, therefore, arsenic, where does it come from? Arsenic comes because I take groundwater from a deep aquifer. If, like our Dr. Krishna just now said, I worked on slowing down water, like our Prime Minister said some time ago, maybe a year and a half ago. If I can get water to stay, and if I can use that as surface water harvesting, as deep as shallow aquifers, for instance, 30, 40 years ago, let us say until 1970, 50 years ago, we used only open wells, we used duct wells. And most of UP, if I'm traveling east of Delhi, is between the Doab of Ganga and Jamuna. And yet we use deep aquifers. If Apej and others can set an example and say, we will have surface water management, shallow aquifers for agriculture first, and then for industry and for residential and commercial buildings like the mall, then the risk or the threat of arsenic and cancer
Let's give Anand and Vivek and Deepak ji and Payal to have make some statements.
Sure.
Anandji, come in.
Sure.
Your thoughts on the discussions that I've raised about various things.
Right.
Definitely, what Dr. Hariharan and you, Krishna Vedula ji, whatever you are saying is absolutely correct. In fact, we had done a study of a village for the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, and we had developed a 25 years Gram Panchayat Spatial Development Plan, which was one of its first kinds from our research cell. And there we made a study of groundwater, and we got certain surveys done to assess the quality of groundwater. And believe me, the village had lakes which were equal to the size of rainwater collected every monsoon on the Abadi area of the village, which signified that, in fact, all villages in the rural belt of Uttar Pradesh have got small ponds, which have the same area as the surface water collection from the monsoon is there. So this equivalence sets up some example of how our rural life was balanced as far as water is concerned. But when we made an in-depth study of the village of Kalonda, there was some cases of cancer and paralysis which were found in a certain small belt. So the analysis of water from some of the wells there and some of the hand pumps revealed that those particular pockets were closer to the most contaminated pond. So the pond contamination, because earlier the pond, the living next to the pond was a cycle. We used to clean ponds. We used to dig out the earth that was cultivated below, the clay that was cultivated by the regular deposition, use that for building and for making pots, and then water used to flow in again. But those cycles were disturbed, and with development and with what we call as Shahari-karan, I mean, that is how they pronounce development here. And with all that happening, the ponds were contaminated. So the groundwater was contaminated. So people were having kidney problems and paralysis in certain specific areas. So the agenda picked up by you is very, very correct. You know, this kind of awareness has to go. Villages after villages, ponds have been encroached in Noida, and they have been converted into Barat ghars, Shadi halls. In fact, one of the pond has been taken up to construct Galgotia School of Architecture also. I mean,
okay.
So it requires a lot of...
it's all man-made, human-made, yeah.
Yeah, reworking. In fact, there is a very interesting question from a student. I don't know why two students had posted questions to me on the chat.
That's good. That's good. Keep writing. Yeah, keep reading it out.
I would like to, although it's a very innocent question, the student is saying we are not educated to develop circular economies, because you had mentioned earlier about circular economies.
Right.
How do we work on it? Because whatever we do, we try to think of buying new. So, so that newness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that mindset has to go away.
Professor Khatri, can I ask you to? Yeah, Professor Khatri, can I ask you to respond to that question as an academician, as a teacher, as somebody who inspires?
Yes.
How do you have very specific case exercises for children who are studying engineering or architecture?
Yeah.
Sir,
Vivek ji,
let Anand complete, then I'll add to it.
Okay, sure.
Sir, as a race which emerged out of the rule, from under the rule, we had this whole process of reconstruction. In fact, today I tell all my students that the traffic in the country of India is the most sustainable traffic. If you want to drive a cycle, you can drive a cycle. The car wala will try to be careful. If you are on a bullock cart, you can still drive it on the road. But if you take the cycle and the bullock cart to any first world country in the road, they will not be able to take it. They will just, be gone. They'll perish. So sustainability has a definition.
It's a jugaad culture. We have the jugaad flexibility.
Yes, you call it flexibility. And so what I tell them is that we must relook at the value systems that we have in our country itself.
Right.
Circular economies, getting a broken slipper repaired, getting a torn shirt repaired, getting a torn pant repaired, getting cars repaired. So at one end, we have got these parallel circular economies which are prevalent and existent in our countries. And at the other end, there is a modern retail format and the development format, which is continuously, eroding the possibilities of having these circular economies. At one end, we have the poor farmer, because of whom we still are able to manage our grocery bills at a very low cost. Your grocery bill and my grocery bill is more or less the same. And that is because of the farmer. That is not because of the economy.
Absolutely.
Our major bills are phone costs, car costs, fuel costs. Everything is superfluous and everything is above the mark. So it's all overflowing into the country. Right. I personally am a very believer in very archaic kind of living. So I get my shirts repaired. I get my car repaired.
Hey, that's good. That's a circular economy. Yeah.
That's circular economy.
Don't throw them away. I think the student that asked the question about learning more about circular economy, I would say that you need to talk to your faculty, you need to talk to other students and create discussion forum about the circular economy. You have to do it. It's not going to happen automatically. Our old phobies are, some of us are going to say the right things, but then when it comes to action and changing the culture in the colleges, we're doing our best, but we need your help, youngsters, to change the culture in your college. Start little discussion groups on climate change and sustainability and the circular economy. Start little groups and have discussions. And then this format that we have here will give you a chance to talk about them. Okay, whenever this group meets, they can have a session where students will talk about what they're doing in their college, in these little groups. So let's have that kind of environment, okay?
Trying to grab anything that popped in the air. One wicket for Australia to register a win in Pakistan after 24 years.
Vivek ji?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thought that even in the educational curriculum, it's been a very slow process over the years, and since we are affiliated to a university, and so we don't have our own framework of the subject that we are teaching. But yes, there has been a change. There were subjects like ecology, sustainability, alternate building materials. They were not there earlier. For many, many years, but today it's become part of the curriculum.
Yes.
And, we are able to reach out to the students to tell them, what is vernacular architecture, what is ecology. And then the best part would be that to integrate that, first, to get the students to work on a project, which Professor Anand just mentioned, that we did a project where it was done during the peak of pandemic time. Yes. So at that point of time, we could not engage many students, but nevertheless, there were a few small group of students who were involved and they were exposed to the real conditions. Because a lot of times, for all the design institutes, they give problems which are more urban problems. We are trying to solve urban issues. We rarely give problems of rural nature. We don't send our students to a village that, okay, go and design a school for them. or do a, you know, a community center for them.
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
problems are basically, you know, of urban nature.
Right.
Design a museum, design a shopping mall, design a luxury hotel. So I think that change in mindset should also come about, where more and more students should be made sensitive, you know, to the real problems, you know, because sooner or later they will have to face the real problems, and they are the ones who are going to solve those problems, you know.
Very good.
So
I think as you said, Vivekji, things are happening, but not fast enough. Change is happening. And one other question the students might ask when I describe this design thinking, problem solving, and going out in the villages and water and working on, you know, the sustainable types of concept, they might say, well, I'm not really prepared to spend my whole life doing these kinds of things. To them, I will say, I want to get a regular job in an industry and make some money, and so and that's perfectly fine. But what we are saying is that this, you know, and I keep emphasizing this all the time, and this, some of my friends and my global experts also emphasize it. It is the process of solving problems that we have to teach them, okay? That's important, okay? Once they learn the process of customer orientation, problem solving, research and designing, prototype, teamwork, communication skills, if you do that process with some water problem or some kind of recycling problem or energy problem, that sticks in your head, the process. And you can go and design the best possible spaceship to go to a moon or something with that same understanding of the process of problem solving. Sure. I think that's what, and the same process can be used in politics, in society. And I think it is a problem solving process that everybody you can use anywhere. It doesn't have to be just to solve water problems or recycling problems.
Krishna, I have two observations. One is there's a person called Gunjan Kumar, wonderful professor from Kolkata, who is here. And he's raised his hand, so I'm sure he's got something to offer. The second is, do I have, you know, what got me to invite you was that fantastic curriculum, or let's say course outline that you had put out, Krishna, maybe 2-3 months ago. And I said, hang on, if these guys are going to be doing this kind of programs for engineering students and architecture students, as well as MBAs and so on in India, this is going to work. Do I have your letter permission to sort of share that screen?
Absolutely.
Lovely. So let's listen to Gunjan Kumar first. Yeah. Gunjan, can you unmute and speak, please, and turn on your video?
Yes. Come on, Gunjan. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, there he is. Gunjan Kumar.
You have to unmute yourself. You're not able to, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we have to get to Deepak ji. We haven't got his comments.
Yeah, Mr. Baba, do you want to respond to what I said on, you know, on surface water and arsenic, or what he said?
I'll say many things, but the most important thing is that I thought I would stay a few minutes, and I'm staying the whole hour.
I know. Even the last time you did that.
It happened last time also. Yes. So I think I'm here today to learn, listen, and it's good to speak, listen to so many speakers. So it's been a good education for me. But Dr. Krishna's last comment resonates very strongly, and I would like more people to pick it up when he said that if there is a problem and a process to solve the problem, that experience can be applied to almost everything. Yes. I want to take a further progression of that statement, which we teach in our company, because everything has to be process driven. We teach that if the process is right, the result will be right. So as an extension of what you mentioned, that people have to learn the problem solving and evolving the process for it. Now, the evolution of the process, we say, if the process is right, the result will be right. So it's very, very important. And I will echo that 10 times over.
I'm glad. Actually,
so that's all that I want to add.
Yeah. No, if anyone takes a basic MPhil course, for instance, before their doctoral, the very first semester, you study critical thinking and rational approaches to decision making, which means what Dr. Krishna said. You have to understand how to make a statement of problem or statement of challenge, and then everything else follows. You know, in continuation of what Mr. Pava said, what Dr. Krishna said earlier, let me quickly share this screen and look at this amazing set of things these people are doing. He told you that he's doing it for 50 colleges. I got this, must have been about 3 months ago, and I was fascinated. I was fascinated with this set of themes that they put out.
This is our conference, yeah, that the annual conference.
See, there is a lot of detail here, ladies and gentlemen. All of you youngsters who are listening to this. But look at the themes: entrepreneurial mindset in students, transforming mathematics, education, and engineering. Cybersecurity, I believe, I'm sure you all are learning. Emotional quotient, emotional balance, best practices, which is about outcome-based education. See, when you do statement of problem, any education, any learning that you have in your classroom or otherwise, got to be outcome-based. Leave mobile robotics and all that. And look at this: smart, clean learning spaces using project-based internship, which is again hands-on. Then he's talking about student-centered learning environment. Look at the interesting themes that they have evolved. And under each of these things, look at each of those subjects and what they're doing to it to get you learning of a very different kind. We heard just now Architect Vivek, Professor Vivek Sabharwal saying, well, we have certain kinds of course outlines, but we are wanting to see what we can do. What I also heard was he has the COA if he's running a school of architecture. He has got AICTE and credits and such challenges if you're faculty members. But look at this, incorporating liberal and creative arts in curriculum. For an engineering student, liberal arts, industry and academic collaborations, how we can bring about. This is one of the things that they discussed in this thematic set of sessions that they had. Product designing using Fusion 360. Accreditation assessment. How can you go about assessments and evaluation? App development using Flutter, which is, one of the software.
So what I would, Arun, Hari, what I would recommend for this, for your group, a lot of people who are experienced in sustainable buildings and architecture, industry type people. What we should probably do, and we're trying this experiment with our own groups. There is one Deepak Gadia, who is a solar energy expert, and he's an entrepreneur. Actually, he has designed these various types of solar cookers and so on, and actually made money on it. Okay, by designing them and selling them, large scale cookers and so on. And he's an entrepreneur. Now he has settled at a place called Muni Seva Ashram, which is near Baroda in Gujarat. And there he's experimenting with all of these things, as well as biogas generation and so on. So we are working on groups of students and faculty who can go there and do internships. See, these things cannot be taught in a classroom or in a small laboratory. Students have to go out there into the real world and do internships to really get an in-depth understanding of what's going on. And so the Center for Entrepreneurship Development in Gujarat, Ahmedabad, one Dr. Prasad is partnering with us. And we are bringing together many of the industry people in the Gujarat area to offer internships to students and faculty, so that to get them excited about starting companies in this space.
Very good idea, Krishna. And now we are 60 minutes into this conversation today. From all that you are doing under IUCWE, what are things that you can offer an Apejay or any of the partner colleges of PJMT as well as of IGBC?
Good question. I think it's just a collaboration, joining hands, okay? Because we're all in this together. You can see from the comments today, we're all in this together. And one of the things that we emphasize at IUC all the time is sharing and collaborating, continuous sharing and collaborating, but not just talking, but actually doing some things. So we can try to figure out if there's something that we can do together in some of our colleges, in your colleges, get the students together to interact and actually, do some real work rather than just talking. Right. That's something we can explore.
Dr. Khatri, I'm hoping you're looking at these things. I'm just scrolling them down for you to understand quickly the themes. Amazing themes: culture and ethics and engineering, incorporating sustainability and community engagement. Somebody talked about villages and such. Transforming engineering curriculum, pedagogy. You see, we are stuck with a certain kind of pedagogy. Excuse me for saying it like that. 50 years, we have had certain kinds of processes of, I will say, teaching. I think teaching has to stop. It has to be sharing of experiences, as Dr. Krishna is saying. And look at this. Active learning strategies for more, he calls it.
So in fact, the lesson the one comment I want to make is, this is not easy. It's a slow process. Transformation is not, people do not want to change.
Dr. Khatri, you want to say something?
Yes, yes. In fact, sir, all these incorporations are from the new education policy.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
They are so well constructed into engineering, looking at liberal arts and engineering together, and ethnic and cultural transformations and engineering together. Right. This intersymbiosis of learning has been pending for a very long time, and it has been existing in architecture all this while. That is all that I would say, sir. Because
I agree with you, Anand. Architecture has led the way. One field has led the way because you're into building stuff, not just mugging up. Your students don't just mug up stuff, right? From the first year, you begin to build stuff. It's very much like the medical profession. They're not just mugging up stuff. They have to work with patients and fix them, right? So the project-based learning is not new to architectural students, not new to, to medical students.
I add over here that, traditionally architects were taught to be problem solvers, but the important thing is that architects are not just problem solvers, they are value enhancers.
Yes,
The moment you realize that you are adding value to a product, is where what an architect's role is going to be. And this is how, the architects will survive and thrive in society if they can add value.
Yeah, so that pedagogy that you have developed is something that engineering colleges should learn.
Yeah, but due apologies to people who run schools of architecture, the number of graduates who come out in the entire country out of architecture schools is no more than about 28,000 today. 550 schools of architecture. Engineers, 1.5 million engineers out of 3,500 colleges.
Correct.
So the focus has to be on engineers and not so much on architects. The other
but we have to learn from architects.
Right. The other thing that happened around 2015, as many of you, all of you know, is the government of India said that, of course, the COA also agreed. I think AICTE said that if I'm a consulting engineer, member of the ACCE, and if I've spent minimum 5 years, I think, of practice, I can draw and approve drawings for sanction plans. Now it hurt architects. Architects said, how can engineers be signing drawings and so on? But it has opened up the field. I think it is important, therefore, that engineers, we bring focus on engineers and learning.
Let me talk about something that Deepak ji had said earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, when he was talking, I think he was the one who pointed out the mathematics, right? Were you the one?
Yes, he was.
Mathematics.
Algorithm, that's right.
You are right on, okay? Yes. The modern Industry 4.0, completely foundation has to be mathematics, okay? Because when you talk about data sciences, sciences is built. I was talking with the professor at University of Oklahoma just yesterday, Professor Hariharan. He's an expert in data sciences. So he says, I can only teach data sciences to students who are really good at mathematics and statistics. And then you have to do data sciences, which can then, because the world is generating so much data everywhere by cameras and sensors and so on. You have to find a way to take all the data and mathematically analyze it and make some sense out of it and create a plan to take advantage of that and move it to the next level. And that's why machine learning, artificial intelligence are all based on mathematics. And our challenge is to take those concepts and convert them into useful projects in the sustainability space. That bridge has to be made.
In fact, there's going to be an acute shortage. There's going to be an acute shortage of mathematicians.
Yes.
This is one thing which was predicted a long time back. And you're absolutely bang on that.
Yeah, we have to. Otherwise, we will lose the edge. I mean, right now, Indian students have an edge with the rest of the world in terms of IT and computer science and so on. They will lose that edge if we don't continuously emphasize mathematics and show to the students that mathematics is a very, very practical subject.
Gemini Ubroy, for the rest of you, he's from Jaipur. Gemini, are you there? Can you say hello to us? No. Okay. I'm jinxed, Krishna. Anyone I call out in recent meetings, the person is not there. Gunjan has also not responded. Padhu, are you there? Do you want to respond since you've...
I cannot be seen, but can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Yes.
And I just want to halt on the issue on process, and I found that very interesting. When you look at the linear economy and the challenges to move from a linear economy to a circular economy, the linear economy of make and
throw
and make and discard, literally make, use and discard, and then move to recycling, reduce reuse, and so on and so forth. There is an approach, and I think you touched upon it in some of your observations. It's a multidisciplinary approach, it's an integrated design approach, and so on and so forth. But could you kind of reflect a little bit on that framework? Because I think the students would obviously learn from the field. Nothing, can displace the fact that they have to go down to the ground and work on projects, and we agree with that. But at the same time, at least from a conceptual point of view, can you just work out a kind of a framework which they could use so as to think from a linear approach to a circular approach? Now, for instance, and this is a very different example, in the power sector, in the Indian power sector, we have moved from what is known as sequential planning to integrated planning, where we look at generation, transmission, and distribution and end use very, not in a sequential manner, but in an integrated manner, and then find out where we can put our money, whether we should put it in generation or transmission and distribution or end use, where you get the maximum bang for the buck. So that's one example for professionals in the power sector. I was just wondering whether there's such a framework which you may be aware of, which you all use, even from an elementary point of view, because that will be very useful.
Sir, I don't have an answer to that. That is something that we have to come up with. There are a few people just beginning to offer these kinds of courses. In fact, there's one that I was taking this semester on circular economy, offered by Delft University and offered by edX. So I think the beauty of the modern technology is that there's so many courses out there, some of it, many of them for free, that we can all take and then use that to do what you're just suggesting. I think we do really need to have courses of this type in our institutions, definitely.
Yeah, I think Hari, you and the team, I think, can kind of wrap your mind around developing such a simple framework,
yes,
without getting into too very many details, because for students they need to see it from an elementary point of view and look at some examples which we come across where the linear approach can be turned into a circular approach.
Sure.
Let me send you the link to that course that I'm talking about. Maybe that might help.
Send it to me, Krishna. And we are just now working with about 4,500 mechanical engineers in government in Karnataka. And maybe we should try something like this on rational thinking, critical, transdisciplinary is the word. Padhu also said it, you raised it. There are two people who have
it's so transformative. Yes. According to me, it takes energy efficiency and decarbonization and all that we have been talking about to another level altogether. It's transformative, and it's probably the area which we really need to focus in. And somebody said earlier that Indians have that ability to do jugaad and so on and so forth, and that's at one level. But now how to institutionalize this?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
In fact, to you, Architect Sabharwal, I will say this. There are at least 90% to every 10 architects, 90 architects, who will say, well, don't ask me about HVAC. Don't ask me about building performance. You want drawings, I'll give you aesthetic, volume, space. Don't ask me about net zero water or water efficiency or anything that is beyond the envelope. I tell these architects, well, you can't be commissioned for a project if you don't bring an understanding of all those elements which plug into the building and plug out of the building. Now, architects are not, I just said where, but I think are still not taught how a building responds to water, energy, waste, and air management. And we seem to think, okay, if I'm an architect, I don't have to think about those things at all. Will anyone respond to this? And the transdisciplinary need, I have to be a little bit of a mechanical engineer, a little bit of an electrical engineer. I have to at least know how to ask those questions if I'm an architect presiding over a project. Priyanshi Agarwal has raised her hand. Priyanshi, do you want to speak? Maybe you can give her audio. Then think about giving her the audio, whatever, while Architect Sabharwal responds to this question. You have been a practicing architect also.
Well, I think, as we always believe that an architect is the captain of the ship, and you rightly said, he is not the master of, he or she is not a master of any one discipline, but knows bit of one discipline and bit of other disciplines. But the challenge is that how do you integrate all the different disciplines And how do you work as a team? Gone are the days when we had architects like Lee Corbusier and Frank Lloyd Wright, who on their own could, take up a building and do. Today, I think the credit should not go to only one architect, it should go to the team. Because after all, the projects are becoming more complex than ever before. And there are a lot of stakeholders involved. There are architects, para-professionals involved. So today, the success story has to be shared, And, in an architect, since there's an area of specialization, that's why, architects are dependent on, someone who's good in energy simulation. You need to have that person in your team. Someone is good in some other aspect. Yeah. So it has to be a teamwork.
Absolutely.
You no longer are the days when a single could deliver.
Vivekji, you have hit on the right button there. Yeah. Teamwork, and none of our faculty members in our institution know how to help students work in teams. What they will do is, if they want to do a team project, they will say, okay, right 4 of you form a team and go and work, but they don't guide them as to how to be an effective team. That's the key missing in the faculty.
Right now in Hyderabad, there is a project of 3.2 million square feet to be done in 2 phases. And the brief that is being carved out, I'm working with 2 others. We are saying, before we are even taking it to architects for bidding, we are saying, this is my brief. One brief is that if I'm building 1.6 million square feet in phase 1, 30% of it we are saying should not be under central air conditioning. We're saying this as a brief. We are not even talking yet about the forms, right? This shift has happened. You remember the old conflict or the war that used to be, what conflict? Between form and function. Clear, people are saying, if you can't give me function and resource efficiency, I'm not interested in form. That era is gone, I think. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Khatri? And how you respond to students and how you make them future ready on these lines. See, between a linear economy of that past and this circular economy is not about some distant, some iceberg that is melting in the Arctic. It's about my house and 1,000 units that I'm spending and how that means 27 tons of coal. How do we teach this to the architect? That is where I'm coming from.
Sure.
If I were to take a building
on a lighter note, people today think that form follows finance. That's what it has come out to be. But there's the whole debate of whether form follows function or not. I think form and function are one. You cannot do one without the other. Right. It's just that people get attracted towards the form first, and they only get to see the function later. Yes. But the whole idea that today the resources are limited. The land is shrunk. So many stakeholders are there. Correct. We have to be careful with every inch of space that we are providing to our client. And no longer there's a single client. As I said, there are multiple stakeholders, and you have to address to all of them, satisfy all of them. So, and your building that you're creating is going to be there for, 60, 70, 80 years. So it's a huge responsibility that the architecture profession has. Absolutely. And they cannot do it all by themselves. You need para-professionals, you need, all kind of people to come together as a team. So it's a team success.
Right. In fact,
I would like to add a little to this, Dr. Hariharan. In fact, I do not see the world as divided between the capabilities of an engineer and an architect in terms of a building, but I personally see the world as an intellectualization world and a world which is not being able to intellectualize living. So we may be engineers, we may be architects, but it is important to lead an intellectually aware life. Once you are intellectually aware, you can actually wean your mind out of the linear economy, bring it to the circular economy. You can practice sustainability. You can be an engineer and have aesthetics also. And on the other hand, if you are not, then in that case, you can be an architect and not be aware of aesthetics, sustainability, as you said, so.
I would
must say this, Krishna, before you
recommend everybody connect with Trustee Doshi. I don't know if any of you have heard of Trustee Doshi, Trupti Doshi in Aurobindo and Pondicherry. Amazing work she's doing, and just such a role model for everybody. She's young and dynamic. I think all the youngsters in our colleges should listen to her.
Right, but she's at the innovation space. Look at Dr. Jain. Anand, when you spoke about it now, how you have to be humane, shall we say. You know what, Dr. 43 years or so he taught, or every Saturday, unfailing, he would land up at SPNA and, teach air conditioning. And you know what he told his students? People like Geeta, many others are there who are themselves veteran professionals today. He would say, be a humane person first. Connect to things around you. As nature goes or as human beings, you will find your solutions. And he never taught. He said, okay, today I'm going to take this building. And you'll be working on some building or the other. He's done over. Krishna, you're talking about this girl, Trustee. Dr. Jain and his company, even before it was bought over by AECOM and all that, I'm saying in 2012, he had already done about 3.5 billion square feet. 3.5 billion square feet of air conditioning. And from that norm of about 150 CFM, he had taken it to 700 CFM by the end of that decade, 2010. This is what we need to do. And how did he find his solutions? Because he was sensitized. That's what I think Dr. Khatri is saying.
So recently, Hari, yes? Recently I came across an article in the Hindu, just a couple of months ago.
Right.
And this was about the
have another 10 minutes.
Climate Crusaders. The title was Climate Crusaders. Okay. They identified, and there was a group of people who identified and under the name of United Nations Climate Crusaders. About 15 youngsters, mostly average age 20, 25 years old. They identified them in different types of sustainability areas related to climate. And then that article had blurbs of those, okay? And then I said, wow, what a fantastic group. And I said, let me try to connect with them. And I was able to connect with 6 of them through connecting with the newspaper person who wrote the article. And I had them come in and talk at one of our conference recently. So that's another group you might want to think about, to bring them to this forum and give them each 5 minutes to talk about what they're doing. And this amazing inspirational stories they have for the youngsters. Youngsters need role models to move them forward, really charge them up.
Right. Talking of which, can we now request each of you, starting with Architect Sabharwal, in maybe 2 or 3 points, which you think students here should take away? And this is a program that is YouTube live streamed also. So it's going to be as a record, which many more students and researchers will see into the future. What would be your take, say 2 or 3 takeaways that you want students as well as faculty to sort of think about for the future?
Well, not an easy question to answer. I think there are a lot of takeaways. One is that, it's a collaborative effort. What students and faculty should realize that, and I always believe that, at least for architecture, it's a thought-built process. So as Krishna sir had already mentioned, the process is more important. I also believe in architecture, it's not the end product which is important, it's the process. And so students should realize that, focus on the process. And, as Krishna ji rightly said, and I think Mr. Deepak ji had mentioned, if the process is right, the end product will be, the result will be good. So my takeaway, which I think students and faculty and all young professionals should take away from here, is that do that research. Research is very important, and it has to be collaborative research, and you learn from your para-professionals, and every professional has something to contribute. You alone cannot do everything. So, you learn from each other, and the best is learning by doing. So whatever you model that you want, it has to be put into practice. We cannot learn in a confined classroom. So if you have something in mind, put it into practice, experiment. You may fail, you may try again, you may fail again, but at the end you will learn. So these are things which I think.
Clear 3 takeaways: collaborative effort and research,
absolutely,
process focus, learning by doing.
Yes.
Dr. Khatri.
Very good.
Dr. Khatri. You have to unmute. Sorry.
Yes. I'm sorry. In fact, for me, the most important takeaway was the deviation from mugging into holistic learning. That was the first very important thing that I feel must be brought into practice. And the most important thing that was repeated time and again by Krishna ji is, I am teaching. Are they learning? So the process, definitely, I personally feel that in my teaching experience, my teaching has always come back to me as a better learning. I have also been on the side of learners while I was teaching, but definitely there is so much of depth in this thought. Empathy and balance are important. And the circular economy dialogue, in fact, that needs an extension. In fact, all this while, when all these discussions have been going on, my mind had actually swayed into the sphere where without architects and engineers, villages after villages, rural after rural, civilizations had existed for centuries, you know. So we are only invaders. So we are invading into life. So it's actually, we must actually open a dialogue into rural sustainability and rural living, which could actually open our eyes as a comparison.
Anandji, engineering and architecture existed before formal education in this field.
Right, sir.
Even the caveman, the person who invented the bow and arrow, was an outstanding engineer. The person who invented the spear, and built the first hut, you know, outstanding engineers and architects. It's about doing it, and that's so, we were just formalize it. That's all.
I think all you're saying is that, you know, with more learning, we are less, you know, wise or whatever. Gunjan Kumar, Professor Gunjan, sorry, go on, Anand, please.
So I would just like to, you know, add to it when I say invaders, actually, a person in the cave, the caveman was doing it for himself. Right. If I would have constructed my house, I would have had immense amount of wellness out of constructing my house. Right. But you know, right now the process is different. I employ people. This whole, this is setting the equation off. This is actually debasing everything. I think this is the imbalance. Yeah. We are not connected. So that is where connection was important.
I hope all the youngsters are listening to this. We are debasing. Gunjan Kumar, would you want to speak, please? No, he's not there. He's there and he's not there. Mr. Pava, your take. You will have the last word, therefore.
Yes. No.
Let's give Deepak the last word.
No, not really. I was here to learn. I'm not here to have a last word. I was supposed to give only a minute of initial talk, but I think I've stayed on. I've learned a lot. Dr. Krishna, it's a pleasure to meet with you, and I think good to listen to other Vivek and Anand Khatri. But I'll not make many more comments. There are a lot of takeaways from lots of people. So if you start with, correct? But Dr. Krishna, definitely, there was a lot to take away from what you mentioned.
Sure.
The question is that we take these things away, they impact you, and then you go back to your daily life and forget about them. I wish there were continuous refresher programs.
Got it. You know, Mr. Pava, let me add to what you said now. To people like partner institutions like Apeejay and many other colleges, I will say what a minister told me some time ago when I went to invite him for some function. And he said, everybody wants to do a karyakram. Tell me who wants to do kram. So to me, this meeting should be the beginning of a conversation where if IUCW has got 50 colleges today or whatever he thinks he's got, how can you partake of some of those benefits of those things that they are curating and you know, offering to people?
I mean, if some of you, your colleges want to be part of this thing, we can offer complimentary, participation.
Lovely.
Some of programs. So send me a short mailing list of the key people from some of these
I'll do that.
colleges.
I will connect you first.
I send emails, hundreds of emails every day.
What we will do is, Payal, do you want to speak on this? There are very many partner institutions from Lady Irwin College to Sri University to, of course, Apeejay and many others. Right. Would you want to speak on this, Payal, as to how we can take this forward to Prem Jain Memorial Trust?
Absolutely. I will.
We need action.
Yes, Doctor, we could create conversations with each of these depending on what the students can engage and participate in. I think we'll have to discuss this more in detail.
Sure. Thank you, Payal ji. Good idea. And I was waiting for you to make a comment. You've been quiet all the time.
Our network has been low, and therefore.
And I was enjoying listening, Krishna ji. Thank you very much. It was a fabulous session.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So to the two of you, Architect Vivek and Dr. Anand, I will say this. I think because as a premier school, you should, and you know, thanks to your resonating so powerfully with whatever we all shared here, I think you should take this forward and see how IUCW can
we'll do that.
It needs